Welcome back to TLT Talks. We have for you today an incredible show. Actually, I'd argue this is one of the most important shows we've ever done. Certainly a really important show for this year and where things Christian Nguyen will be jumping on in just a second. Formerly, Christian was the top dog over at Citizens Bank. And then also with #1 customer reviews, which is no surprise to the Litvak team because he takes amazing care of our clients. Here he is. What's up, Christian? How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, Eugene?
So formerly top dog at Citizens, and then he took his talents solo. Well, not entirely solo. Him and this incredible entrepreneur, Ace, started their own bank, and now he's a senior loan officer at said bank. Minimum red tape, exciting outlook, entrepreneurial solutions, etc., etc. I mean, Christian, I could talk about you literally all day long. Instead, I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, or I should say reintroduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I love being on the show. I love educating buyers, sellers about the market. I think it's just a wild time to be in. And, there's, like we've said before, it is either people look at this and they're either scared, or people look at this and this is an opportunity. And for myself, Ace coming into the market, owning his new bank, many people were exiting, he was entering, right? And that just shows the mindset, how powerful it is to make these decisions. And I decided to go with him. I'm bringing my talents. There's a lot of things that are going on in the market. #1 in customer reviews while I was at Citizens. #2 over here right now, and I'm excited. There's a lot of things happening.
Love it. I love what Ace is doing, man. When the market wasn't so great, this other little company called Compass from a basement apartment, started, and look where that is today. Even my man Sirhan, even Ryan, he when the market was terrible, he decided to leave Nest Seekers, open his own thing, and he's blowing up all over the country. So I love it, man. Any entrepreneurship progress is good for all entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are the way problems get solved, the energy of problem solving. So big up to you and to Ace. Great job on what you guys are doing. Your courage, your foresight, all of it. Great job. So
Appreciate it.
So Christian, today we got this doom and gloom topic called interest rates. The rates are so high. I actually think the rates, the 30-year fixed anyways, just crept over 8%. So what do we do? What do the consumers do, Christian? The rates are so high. What do we do, man?
It's one of those things where we just have to take things as they are and just game plan around it, right? We don't have a crystal ball. Unfortunately, I wish I had one, but we don't. And so what we do is we figure out what are the best solutions for our clients. In this particular case, I know that there are listings on the market because they can't sell to buyers with these high interest rates. And so what's going on right now is you have, two options. One is that the buyers can buy down interest rates, and you have to do the math to determine if that makes the most sense, right? Because when there's a cost of buying down the rate, you want to know, well, what's my break-even point, right? How many months does it take to buy down this interest rate will I take to automatically recoup it? And a lot of times when you do the math, it could be anywhere from 12, 24, 36 months, depending on the situation, depending on how much you buy down. The second thing is to kind of get some transactions going, is that you can request from the seller a concession. And the concession would be that the seller pays down the rate and also pays down the closing costs. So literally a buyer can literally buy a transaction, only having the funds with the down payment, everything else is covered, which is pretty interesting. And I'm happy to run some math with you, with any of your audience, with any of your team members, and you'll see the benefit of actually doing that.
Yeah, that's right. So let's break it down. So guys, whoever's going to be watching this now with us live, feel free to ask any questions. Whoever's going to watch it later, when it gets circulated, feel free to reach out with questions. Our message to you today is that there are many different ways to solve for interest rate. #1, as interest rates go up, we all know that prices are going to get a little bit softer, negotiability is going to increase. So keep in mind, you marry the property, you date the payment. There will be some point in the future where the rates go down. Because rates are higher, sales prices are going to be a bit softer. So that's #1, looking for that. #2, the 30-year fixed is not the only mortgage product out there. We've talked about this on the show and on our team to nauseum. You've also got the ARM. You've also got the interest only. So again, You got 5, 7, 10, 15-year ARMs and interest only. ARMs are adjustable rate mortgages. The number in front of the product, 5, 7, 10, that's how many years you're locked in for, is very unlikely. No one has a crystal ball, but it's highly unlikely these rates stay like this forever. And it's even more unlikely that you as a New York City purchaser of property will own that property forever. You know, these are both unlikely. So why commit to a mortgage rate that you're only paying for a 30-year fix? So the ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage. It's locked for whatever amount of years it's locked. Then it goes to the adjustable rate. Most people refi out before that actually happens. And the IO is the interest only, which is basically usually hovering around the same rate as the ARM. However, you're paying only interest, not principal. So you save a lot of money there. That's usually the lowest payment. So I did this the first time, I want to say 2014 maybe, where we were looking to buy a 2-bedroom home. And just to break it down the numbers, then a 30-year fixed payment was $8,800. A 7-year ARM payment was $6,600 because there was a full percentage point difference in the rates, and interest only was like $4,400. So that's how big the difference can be. If you're interested in exploring any of that, it's a real easy call to Christian. Hey Christian, I'm thinking about buying a property. This is the down payment. This is the loan. Can you just run it for me? What's an ARM? What's an IO? What's the fix? What does it look like? And you can see just that. So that's the first. That's the foundation. The foundation is a couple products. Christian, let's talk buy down. So can we specifically let's pick a property that's $1 million. Yep. Let's just say the property is $1 million. Let's say that the person, John Smith, we're always talking about this magical John Smith. Yeah. Last month, Brennan and I talked about John Smith was a renter. John, please consider buying because rents are so astronomical, even with these rates. You could buy down the rates, and we really beat up John Smith last month. So let's say John Smith, he saw the light, he's out there, he's looking for a purchase property now. He's watching our show, and he's like, all right, well, my budget's $1 million. I'm putting down $200,000. The rate's 8% on a 30-year fix, which means it's probably around 7 or 7.25 for an ARM and IO.
Yeah.
But that's still very high. That's going to lead me to a payment of X. Well, talk to me about this buy down thing. So let's educate John Smith. What does the buy down look like? What's the max buy down? Give us some deets.
So, right now with buy downs, you're on the money. First of all, you're basically like a mortgage banker, just the way that you've been describing everything. So kudos to you. But in terms of everything else going on, in terms of interest rates, as you mentioned, with 30-year fix just hitting 8% right now, and buying down the interest rate. What does it really mean to buy down the interest rate? If the market rate is at 8% and you want to get to the lower rate, you can, but you have to buy down to get to that lower rate, right? And so now you have to do the math to see how much does it cost you to do that. So one point is essentially 1% of the loan amount. So in your specific example, $800,000, 1 point would get you $8,000 that you would have to spend to get down the rate. In this particular case, let's just take for an ARM, for example. For a 5-year ARM, it's at 7.25%. To buy down 1 point, you'll get 7%. So you're buying down, you're paying $8,000, you'll get a 0.25% difference on the rate. And so that math, I don't have my Excel spreadsheet up right now, but that math, you just have to figure out how long it'll take for you to recoup that. And sometimes that 7% may be worth it. And sometimes I can make or break the transaction.
That's right.
But particularly in this particular case where we talked about the seller giving concession, $8,000 is not too bad. Instead of lowering the price by like $50,000 to get transactions in. I mean, if someone came to me, I only need to have the down payment and my seller would cover my closing costs and buying down my rate. That's a pretty solid transaction, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. So what's the maximum? What's the maximum? But let's say that I'm someone that plans to own the property. I know I'm not going to own it forever. My family and I, we bought a home about a year ago. We knew we were going to be like, we're not the 20, 30-year people because we can't, we probably are going to upgrade or change or whatever.
Yeah.
But we were like 7 to 10 years for sure. So we went with a 10-year interest only. We bought down the rate. I think anyone that's 5 to 10-year purview, probably a no-brainer buy down the rate. So let's talk max. What is the maximum amount that a rate can be bought down? Let's say from 7.25. What's the most I could buy down the rate?
I'd say every lender that you speak with will have different tolerances. And also you have to meet the New York State tolerances where you don't want to be as a high cost loan. But generally speaking, I'd probably say you're looking anywhere between 2 to 3 points on the buy down. And what that means in terms of interest rate, like I said, it is going to vary bank to bank. But from what I have here, You could buy 2 points down and you get 6.75 on the 5-year arm.
So guys, hear me. The 30-year fix, what you're seeing in all the headlines is 8%. Number one, you can go to an ARM or an interest only. Now you're at like 7.25, and your monthly payment is going to be lower. If you go interest only, especially, then your payments can be about 60 or 70% as opposed to the 30-year fixed, right? Then on top of that, you've got this opportunity to buy down the loan. So now you're going to go from 7.25. If we're talking about 2 points, that's now 5.25 or 5.5. I also want to make this point. You know, whenever looking at things, I think people's view can sometimes be too short-sighted. If everybody zooms out, right? If you look at a mortgage interest trend, and we zoom out past 5 years to like 40 years, you're going to see that the average over 40 years is like 6%. You're going to see that this 8% is not actually that crazy. That, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, the interest rates were well over that for a long period of time. So that's number one. Then number two, if you go down the road of an ARM or an interest only and you do any of this buy down stuff, you're right back to, you know, historical lows. 5%, 5.25 would still be historical lows. It's not the 3% everybody got used to, but also everybody knew that was temporary. It was actually lasted way longer than anyone thought it would. But that was just, I can't see us ever going back to those kind of rates ever again. It's like we're never going to have taxes that are 10% again. Taxes are 30, 40%, whatever the number is. So this 3%, we just need to wipe it out of our mind. It's not happening again.
Right.
I do think eventually the rates will, you know, come down some from where they are now. They might go up a little bit more in the short term because inflation is still a problem. But the whole point of our message today in this show is you are not stuck at this highest interest rate that everybody talks about. You've got ways to bring that way down. So to close off the first topic, there's multiple different mortgage products out there. Do not find yourself scared that just because you can't do a 30-year fixed, that means you can't buy property. And do not get seduced by your parents or grandparents that say, no, you got to get into a 30-year fixed. But look, the rates just went up. It's not safe. Try to stay away from all that. Secondarily, you have this ability to buy down the rate depending on the bank. So again, if we're talking about 2 points here, and we're talking about $16,000, and now bought the rate down 2 full points. Again, if you guys are interested in those exact numbers, feel free to reach out to myself and I'll connect you with Christian or Christian directly. We'll get you his contact info at the end of the show. That's 16 grand, or even if it's 3 points, assuming that's possible, that's when that upfront money over the course of, if it is a 5, 7, 10-year purchase, easily is a decision. Yeah. So that's the buy down, right? That's how the buy down generally works. Again, I think Christian said something really accurate. Different banks will have different rules, and actually, where you know why Christian is number one in customer service, and why we continue to work with him, is if you reach out to Christian and Christian's bank doesn't have what you need, he's the first one to set you up with any of his relationships, any of his other banks, because that's the reason him and I get along so well. His number one outcome is the client getting served. And if he can do it, great. And if he can't, he'll get you served elsewhere. So don't worry about, yeah, but I've got Wells or I've got HSBC. Christian can be a really great first point of contact just to understand all this stuff. He's a spreadsheet junkie like I am, so naturally we get along. Him and I totally geek out over spreadsheets. All right, so we got the different rates. We got the buy down. Christian, talk to me about this thing called concessions again. Let's walk through one more time what exactly that looks like.
Concessions are really important, and they do vary per transaction. And the reason why I say that is because banks have guidelines on how much concession is applied. And that's dependent on if it's a primary residence, a second home, or an investment property. And depending on how much they put down also dictates how much is the max allowable concession. So typically, if you put less than 10% down, you're only allowed to get a 3% concession on the purchase price. When you do from 75 to 90%, you get 6%. And anything below 75%, you can go as high as 9% concession. And so obviously you don't have to go that high as 9%. You do whatever it works in between to make the transaction work between the seller and the buyer. Obviously, everyone wants to have a win-win situation. But if this concession, whatever it's used, it has to be used for, in the legal term on the contract, has to say applicable to closing costs and prepaids. Prepaids meaning anything that's on the closing disclosure, and that could be like taxes or homeowners insurance or what have you, right? As long as it's on that closing disclosure, that is allowable funds that can be used towards the concession.
Love it. Love it. So let me break that down in practical application. John Smith is looking at this $1 million house, and John Smith has put away 20% for his down payment. John Smith has put away about 50 grand for his closing costs. So John Smith is watching the show, and he's like, well, Eugene and Christian, thanks a lot. I want to buy down the rate, but I'm not Bill Gates. I don't have any more cash. What do I do here? Right? As we know, the sales market at the moment is not what it was, in this past run. And so there are still some bidding wars, things that are priced really well, but for the most part, there's a little bit of a softening in the market. So John Smith can go and make an offer right now, and he can say to the seller, listen, I will pay you full price for this apartment. However, I would like a 3, 4, 5, 6% concession. And he can use that towards the buy down of the rate. He can use that towards any of the closing costs. Here's what makes this really cool. If John Smith successfully negotiated the purchase price down $50,000 and he bought it for $950, woohoo, go John, 50 grand, 5%, love it. However, 50 grand amortized over 30 years in a mortgage payment isn't really going to move the needle much. What's that? $100, $125, $150, something like that, right? I mean, you're talking about a month of Starbucks. Actually, talking about a week of Starbucks, probably, depending who you are, right? So ultimately, it doesn't move the needle much. But John Smith making an offer for $1 million and his closing costs going from 50 to basically zero, and him saving 50 grand of cash makes a really big difference. So for the buyers out there, when you're out there negotiating, just understand you can negotiate not just the sales price, but what I would recommend you guys do is build in concessions into your negotiations. If you're putting out 20% or more, 6% on $1 million, that's 60 grand. On $2 million, that's 120,000. That wipes off. Typically, New York City closing costs on a resale are about 4 to 5%. You add about 1% for a new development. If you can successfully negotiate 5% concession, you're basically wiping out your closing costs. Then that gives you the opportunity to add these buy-ons, bring your rate down. And so that's a really effective way to take advantage of this market. While everybody's scared or concerned about rates, you are educated. You know that you can go in there. You know you can negotiate. You know you're buying the property, but only dating the rate. You know that you're going to buy down your rates. So you have an opportunity here to get a real steal. If you're a seller and you know this is going on out there, then a great way to market yourself and to stand out is to advertise or promote that you as a sale listing will do a sales concession of X amount of dollars. And so for both sides, there's always opportunity to deal make. When things start to shift a bit, some people run and some people lean in. For anyone that knows me, we're the leaner inner type. Obviously, Christian did not get scared of this wave of market, and he jumped ship and went to do his own thing. And so for the people that are out there that are, this could be the thing you've been waiting for. Because again, while everybody else is stuck at 7-8%, you might get yourself some softness on the sales price and an interest rate of about 5.5%. And you might find, you've been pushed out of the market these last couple of years because the market's been untouchable. Actually, with the right knowledge and the right execution, this could be an amazing time to set yourself up for the next decade. And then when the rates do eventually come down, and what goes up must come down, they will come down eventually. Lo and behold, the inverse model of pricing, when the rates come down, pricing will go up, and now you've locked in a really good rate for a really good deal, and ultimately you're going to have, upside appreciation over the course of the next, whatever it is, 5, 7, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So I think, look, our messaging today is about, if you look at people like Warren Buffett, if you look at people like Tony Robbins, if you look at people like Robert Repkin and Ryan Serhant, if you look at the people that are the entrepreneurs of the world, when everybody else is running, that's when they see opportunity. So we implore you today, not to just read headlines, but get educated with this stuff. Myself and Christian are both available for any and all follow-up questions. Neither one of us are monetarily driven. We're both driven by service, and anytime that we can help somebody get into a home or into an investment and build their wealth or build their lives, that fills both of us up. So
100%.
Christian, any final thoughts, my man? Any final thoughts?
I mean, just given what you've been saying, it's all fact. It's all truth in terms of trying to get the transaction done where both sides of the transaction win. And there's also a third transaction, which is actually the building, right? Because if you look at co-ops, a lot of the time they don't want to devalue their
Right.
units.
That's right.
And even
That's
if you
right.
try to go for a lower purchase price, you still have to pass the board, and the board may be like, whoa, this price is way too low. We're not going to approve the sale.
That's right.
So what they do is they still keep it at the same purchase price, give the whole concession. When you close to the public, it's still going to close at that purchase price, right? But in reality, you got a pretty good deal because you got the concession for it. So
right.
it's just really important that buyer wins, seller wins, co-op wins, the building wins. It's a way to keep everybody happy. And like you said, we do things just to get the transaction done for the clients, so that way they can build their wealth through asset, through real estate, and we'll take them one step at a time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's so spot on. And one final thought, actually, just because as we have a couple of minutes, we're ahead of schedule for once. For once, we were really efficient in the topics we need to get through.
I love it.
A final thing, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. The final thing is there's something called a SEMA. So a SEMA is when you're assuming a mortgage. So when you're, for sellers, just find out if your mortgage is assumable. For buyers, when you're looking at a property, ask the listing agent, is the seller's mortgage assumable? When you assume a mortgage, you vacate the mortgage recording tax. That's 2% you save. So now again, imagine you're a creative thinker. You're going out there, you're making an offer, you're asking for closing cost concessions. And so you get some of those, you buy down the rate, you offset some of your closing costs, you do a SEMA that saves you 2% of your closing costs. You can literally find yourself in a mortgage rate of 5% or so, locked up for the next 10 years, and pay zero closing costs out of pocket. That is 100% possible in the market today. And we've actually executed, myself and Christian, we've executed such things for clients. So again, you are not stuck. There's plenty to do. Get off the bench. The rents are certainly not going down. The rents are still as aggressive as ever. And so you can be paying down your own equity and building your own wealth, or you could be doing that for somebody else. So hopefully you guys will hear us. John Smith, for all the John Smiths out there, hopefully you'll hear us and you'll take some action. So we're here for you if you need anything. See, for real, any final thoughts? For real, any final
look,
thoughts?
we do rent versus buy scenarios all the time. And the truth is, the numbers never lie, right? You just have to run the numbers, run the scenarios, run the transactions. So you see what makes the most sense for me. Do I want to continue renting for 1, 2, 3, 5 years? 60 months of payments of like $3,000, that's $180,000. That's a lot of money. That's money you'll never see again. Versus if you had enough money to put down the down payment, build up your equity, it's different, right? I mean, look, we can skin the cat a million different ways. It's just a matter of running the numbers. So,
and good luck finding a $3,000 apartment in New York City. So, yeah, for sure. Christian, thank you very much. My final thoughts are just, hopefully you guys are finding the show that we do of value. If there's any topic that you'd want us to talk through, I mean, we're just trying to find the topic and the speaker that's most relative to what's going on in the marketplace. But if there's anything you guys would want to see, feel free to reach out, and definitely take advantage of reaching out to Christian, one of the most brilliant minds in the country in the way of, financing. And so feel free to take advantage of that. Christian, my man, love our both business and personal relationship. You're such a gem, man. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you, man. Love you guys. See you soon. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Take care, everyone.